When I'm working at the shop, one of the biggest questions I get asked is what pole float to use and when. And there's such a massive range of pole floats available to the public nowadays. There's different thicknesses, there's different shapes, different lengths. Maver make a great range of commercial pole floats. Now today I've picked out some of my favourite from the range, and I'm just going to talk you through why I use them and when I use them. Now I've picked 3 floats out of the range that I would use for all of my winter months fishing at venues such as Tunnel Barn. To start off with, I'll talk to you about the MVR FINESSE 6. Now this is the type of float that I would use for all of my maggot fishing. To start off with, we've got a 1.2mm hollow bristle, so it's still quite fine, quite finesse to see all the little dinky bites, but it still can let the light pass through the hollow bristle so you can see it in the most awkward of lights. The body itself is very slim. When you are fishing with maggots, what can happen a lot is you can get an odd line bite, you can miss a few bites, so a slim body is really important. So when you're striking, you don't get much resistance as the float comes out of the water. The most important bit about this float though, for when you're fishing with maggots, is the carbon stem. Most of your bites, or a lot of your bites, when you're fishing with maggots will come as the bait's falling. So what I want to do is slow that fall up as much as possible. I want to drop my rig in, lay it out to the side and get my hook bait to sink as slow as possible. That carbon stem really does help me with that. The next float I want to talk to you about is the MVR FINESSE 1. Now this float is very similar in shape. We've got the same slim body but a slightly different bristle and a slightly different stem to the FINESSE 6. To start off with, we've got a 1.5mm hollow bristle, slightly thicker for when I'm fishing with pellets. Pellets are generally quite a little bit heavier than maggots, and you want to fish them a little bit more direct, and the bites can be quite positive. So that slightly thicker bristle really does cope with pellets perfect. The other nice thing about it is that you've got a wire stem. Now this is really important when you're fishing with pellets to keep your bait as still as possible. Again, with maggots you want to be laying your rig out. I found personally with pellets you want to get your pellet to the bottom as quick as possible and hold everything dead still. That wire stem really does help me with that. It makes sure my rig gets to the bottom quickly and holds dead still. The last one is the MVR FINESSE 2. Now this float again has got a 1.5mm hollow bristle, a wire stem, but the biggest difference about it is the shape of the body. This one has got a rounded body, more of a rugby ball shape style body. This is the float I use when the conditions aren't great. If you've got a lot of undertow, a lot of wind, and you want to keep your float dead still, this is the one to use. You can hold on to the float and it doesn't ride out of the water. That rounded body really just keep the float down under the water, nice and still, nice and stable. You can use this fishing with maggots or pellets when the conditions aren't great. The other use of them is to use it when I'm fishing with bread. If I'm dobbing bread along the far bank like we could be today, it's really important to keep your float dead still when you're fishing with bread because the bait's off the bottom. The last thing you need is your bait that's off the bottom moving about. This float really does fit the bill perfect. Moving on, I'm going to talk to you about a few floats for the warmer months. To start off with, I'm going to go through the MVR Series 10 and 11. Now these floats have been designed just around paste fishing. To start off with, we've got an eye in the top of the bristle. We've got a longer bristle than any other float in the range, a slim body with a fiberglass stem. Now the reason behind this eye in the top of the bristle is that when you're fishing with paste, the bites are extremely fast, they're very positive. Now you do hit more bites when you're fishing with paste if you can keep everything in line. If you can keep your main line of the rig out of the water and your pole tip above the float, you will hit more bites. The long bristle is that ideal when you're fishing with paste because what you're actually doing, you're using the weight of the paste to cock the float. So you can't always get it perfect to the centimetre. So that long bristle just gives you 1.5 inches of play with how you've plumbed up to how the paste sits with the float. The body is very slim, so when you're fishing and you do tend to miss a few bites with paste, you're not causing too much resistance as the float comes out of the water. A fiberglass stem, so it's ultra strong, you're not going to break it in the net or when you're playing these big fish. It really is a great method. It's a match winning method where you catch big fish that you wouldn't catch on any other bait. These floats have been designed around paste fishing and are perfect for it. The next float I want to talk to you about is the MVR Series 9 jigger float. Now this really is a match winning method. It is a method that I've been using a lot in the summer months when the fish are up off the bottom and can be quite difficult to catch on your conventional rig where the float goes under, you're striking and missing lots of bites. This really is the float for that job. Basically, it's designed that it's got weight in the bottom of the jigger and it's got a hole going right through the middle of the float. Now this is designed so that the line can pass through the float. And what you can actually do is when you're fishing shallow, is just drop your hook bait at the speed that you want to, keeping that float on the surface of the water until it hits the stop. The weight in the bottom of the float is great because what you actually be doing is slapping the rig over. That weight in the bottom of the float will create more noise, attracting more fish into your peg, and will keep everything in a dead straight line. It really is a great method for catching big weights when you're fishing shallow in the summer months. The next float is the MVR Series 7. Now this float has got a really unique use. It's designed all around fishing in the summer when it's really hot and you're trying to dob fish off the surface. To start off with, it's got a really thick bristle, so it suspend baits, heavy baits like pellets, wafters, boilies, that sort of thing. The body itself is the best thing about the float. The last thing I want to be doing when I'm fishing for fish that are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches under the surface is having a hook bait that sinks really quickly. So the last thing I want is any shot on the line. This float has all the weight of the float built into the body, very similar to the jigger. It's inline as well, so when you're fishing very shallow, a very good depth to fish in the summer when you're trying to dob fish is 8, 10, 12 inches deep. The last thing you want is to have that float in your landing net and break in. It's inline, so it's virtually impossible to break. A great all-round float for fishing in the summer for dobbing. The last float I want to talk to you about is the MVR Series 2. I've left this one to last for a reason. If someone said to me, you've got to fish with one pole float for the rest of your life, can't fish with any other pole float, this would be the one. It's such a great all-round float for commercial fishing. To start off with, it's got a 1.7mm hollow bristle, so it's great for all baits. You can fish meat, you can fish corn, pellets, bread, anything you want with this float. That bristle, the light's going to pass through and you're going to be able to see it in any light. The body itself is very slim, so when you're fishing on commercials and you're missing an odd bite, there's not loads of resistance on the float as it comes out of the water. It's the best shape all-round body throughout the pole float range. The stem on it is wire, so you can use it when it's calm. Using a wire stem when it's calm is absolutely fine, but if the conditions are tricky like they are today, it's a bit windy and you want to hold your float dead still and not have it riding out of the water, that wire stem really does help you in that situation. Like I said before, if I was going to pick one float to go anywhere in the country, commercial fishing, this would be the one.